This couple, in just 3 years, they committed the heinous act of killing over 48 young men. The bodies will be dried and categorized, layer upon layer buried in the family's pigpen and vegetable garden. During the trial, it was deliberately stated that it was to reduce corruption in society. What is going on here? This story is based on true events. Welcome to the folk tale of the Dragon Slayer. This story takes place in 1985 at a construction site in Shangluo City, Shaanxi. The appearance of the midnight hour. A worker named Hijenki is resting in the shed. But suddenly I felt a hint of kindness. The same feeling that followed. He sneezed. He woke up from a dream, soon to be scared into the expression of an enemy's boyfriend meme. Because I sleep in front of the man. It is a completely naked and pitch-black ghostly figure. The terrifying eyes locked onto the man. And that terrifying big face is getting closer step by step. A series of shrill cries escaped from its mouth. Open your eyes and look at that gaping mouth of blood. Just about to kiss myself, I intended to get up and clear the way immediately. But at that moment, for some unknown reason, it feels like I'm being pressed down by a ghost. I couldn't move at all, just when he thought he was about to meet his end. Only then did I realize it was a nightmare. I suddenly realized that my coworker sleeping beside me had mysteriously disappeared. Suddenly I heard the sound of an excavator outside the door. Is it too late for the coworkers to be secretly competing with each other? Looking for the sound, I turned to see. Goodness, it's so late and you're still working on the boss's notifications. Upon closer inspection, I realized something was off. The worker in front of me has silent eyes. A strange smile still lingered on his lips. Hijenki saw his coworkers wide awake in the middle of the night, wondering what madness they were up to. So he was asked to stop quickly. Kejeng's shout seemed to have no effect at all. The worker seems to have a certain purpose. Zheng is digging frantically. Then he jumped into the dud pit. It seems to be searching for something. Genki finally mustered the courage to step forward. I want to stop my coworker's crazy and bizarre behavior. But when the man sees the situation before him, the flower from the throat was swallowed back down. The worker's escape speed is not fast, despite my hands being worn to the bone by the stones. After a while, a complete white skeletal human body has been excavated. Kejenki is despairing in the back. The worker in front suddenly moved at a rapid pace. Rotate your neck 90 degrees. How about we find a Bengal tiger to solve this? At this moment, his taut nerves finally collapsed. He screamed and fled the construction site. At the same time, they hugged tightly. The next day, the special rescue team sent 2 people to investigate this individual. The person arriving is Captain Liu. Lao Liu took a deep breath and howled like a wolf, this time based on geological and skeletal death time. I estimate it's probably related to the serial murder case from '85. Zhao Kai's eyes sparkled as soon as the master mentioned that matter. Team Liu, who was quite curious, urged him to talk about the case from 1985. Team leader Liu acted on his own accord last time. The boys and girls who signed up for Zhao Kai feel sorry. So I agreed to his request. It was a morning in '85. 2 villagers dragged a short man into the office hall. Detective Old Lai, who was utterly confused at the time, worried about the murders that have occurred in recent years. The 2 are relatives of the recent deceased, still shouting for us to catch the murderer. Old Lai understands the anxious feelings of the family, but the man in front of me is so small and thin, adding dozens of dead, most of whom were young and strong. He is a murderer. It really doesn't make sense. The 2 saw that Arthur did not believe. This little temper flared up right away, shouting loudly that they have gathered the evidence. It turned out that my younger brother had been missing for nearly half a month. The last time I appeared was to work at his house. He also found a picture of his younger brother from his pocket. Old Lie found it somewhat suspicious. So he instructed the police to lock the person in the detention room. I will visit that person's home. No one expected. Next, we will discover a shocking and astonishing fog that stuns both China and the world. Because most houses in the village do not have door numbers, Old Lie approached the passing villager, investigate their location. The old man was surprised to hear they were going to a farmhouse. His expression suddenly changed. Also tell Lao Lai not to go at all. Since 1983, his home felt like it was haunted. The house still exuded a different kind of atmosphere from another crop. Once, when I passed by a farmhouse, suddenly I felt like someone was watching me. I turned my head away. There stood a person on the wall. It was too dark to see their appearance. Wait for me to rub my eyes and take a closer look. This is a woman with disheveled hair. The whole body was tinged with a dead gray color. It seems like they keep mumbling something. The woman's face twisted into a grimace, let out a roar towards the sky. The old man was so scared that his hair stood on end. I thought she was just a farmer's wife. If you think about it carefully, the farmer's wife is disabled. How could one possibly stand on the wall? From that day on, the haunted farmhouse. It quickly spread throughout the entire village. As a police officer, Old Lie certainly didn't believe in such things. Seeing the old man speak so earnestly, feeling uneasy in my heart, arriving at the farmhouse door, parked the car and walked up to knock on the door. After knocking for half a day, there was no response at all. Thinking that there should be no one at home, originally planned to be there if there was really no one. Let's visit the neighbors. Suddenly, a smell wafted from the farmhouse. A foul smell wafted through the air. After being a police officer for decades, this flavor made Lao Lai frown. It wrinkled up instantly. Then he immediately climbed over the wall and entered. The stench of decay grew stronger. So I followed the scent into the room. As soon as the door opened, Old Lie concluded this time. This is definitely the stench of a dead body. Instantly perked up. But this room is really too dim. Can't see anything clearly. Carefully distinguished. The smell of decay was coming from the storage room on the second floor. But that was a blind spot, making the path impossible to see. Fortunately, there was a ladder beside me. Just about to climb up for a look, but at that moment a hoarse sound suddenly rang out. Old Lie was so scared he almost fell, because in Lao Lai's eyes this room should be empty. This sudden change in life is truly unexpected. The woman curled up in the corner, motionless, revealing a terrifying influence, still speaking words that Old Lie cannot understand. This reminded me of what the old man said. This woman must be the farmer's wife. Indeed, he is a disabled person. It is very likely. There were some issues with this match as well. However, Lao Lai still noticed. The fiery lady often drifts towards the second floor. This made him determined. I must go up and find out for myself. The wooden corner on this ladder. It doesn't seem very stable either. The corner of the eyebrow decoration makes a chirping sound. In this pitch-black room, it appeared exceptionally terrifying. But this bit of horror was nothing compared to what Old Lie was about to see next. It's like 9 cows and 1 monkey. Lai Si has been a police officer his whole life. What scene have you never seen before? But this time he was truly shocked. On this wooden plank layer, 2 completely naked bodies are intertwined with each other. I can hardly imagine. The Long family still has the mood to sleep in the alley. The body has been there for an unknown amount of time. This appalling stench almost made old Li throw up. A sudden loud noise. Li C jumped down all of a sudden. He took several steps back, but at that moment it seemed he stepped on something again. Don't say that this thing actually feels pretty good on the feet. Very softening, still damp. This gave old Li a sense of foreboding. I didn't expect that in the black plastic bag behind the door, all filled with decaying human tissue sticks. I just stepped on a severed human arm. In this frightening bargain sale, completely infuriated Detective Old Li. If you often walk at night, so be sure to remember this sentence. Ming lives in an abandoned grave. Do not dwell in a dilapidated temple, because not everyone living in a broken temple is a deity. That year, Lai Zhangping was still a young carpenter. Because his skills are exceptional, he is very handsome, the little widow from the nearby alleys. Everyone likes to ask him to fix furniture. That day, Lai Zhangping took on furniture for someone else. He politely declined the enthusiastic advances of the young widow, like a true gentleman. It was already getting dark when I first arrived. He knew there were wild wolves roaming in the nearby forest. There are frequent incidents of wild wolves attacking people. So Lai Zhangping walked quickly. The more anxious you are, the more likely you are to make mistakes. Lai Zhangping was passing by Luanfengangwen. The tire was unexpectedly punctured by a bone fragment. Encountering this in the middle of the night. This is truly unfortunate. Fortunately, he had tools in the car. But this repair. It was already late into the night. The sound of wolves howling continued to echo from the forest behind. This situation really sends shivers down my spine. Lai Zhangping fixed the car. I don't plan to continue walking on the night road anymore. It's a small matter. He searched all round. Near Wanfenggang, there is an old, dilapidated temple that has fallen into disrepair, although it is unknown what deity is being worshipped inside. But at least it's a monitoring room. It can be considered a form of shelter. Lai Zhangping parked the car outside. Carrying wooden boxes and bedding, they entered the temple. Only after lighting the candle did I see clearly. The temple was simply in ruins. Seeing this, Lai Zhangping felt a pang of compassion in his heart. He happened to have wooden planks with him. Just take out the old doors and windows easily. Just made some simple repairs. It's also a way to be positive for myself. After fixing the doors and windows, Lai Zhangping was also extremely exhausted. After munching on some dry rations, he went to sleep, even though a statue of Buddha sat beside me. But nearby is the Luanfenggang, a chaotic graveyard. The wolf howls, echoing like a deer. Saying I'm not afraid is a lie. Lai Zhangping also didn't dare to really sleep. Just close your eyes and pretend. The first half of the night was fine. As the night wore on, he felt increasingly cold lying there. That kind of cold is just like the dampness of the southern return to spring days. Bitterly cold. It makes one feel like there are ice shards in their bones. Lai Zhangping couldn't bear the cold. I opened my eyes and looked. The candle flame in front of the Buddha statue flickered strangely. Logically, the flame should be yellow. But the pile of candles in front of me, the flames surprisingly emitted an oily green light. Lai Zhangping was wondering if he had encountered a ghost. A loud banging sound echoed from behind the door. The urgent knocking on the door. It feels particularly intense in the deep night. Lai Zhangping bravely asked, "Who is it?" What responded to him was an even more intense pounding. The sound was as if the river was being torn apart. Lai Zhangping was scared to death. He didn't know what exactly was outside the door. The newly repaired doors and windows seemed ready to be hit at any moment. A heart was brought to the throat. Immediately after, a claw covered in black fur reached in from outside the window. The claw was stopped by the window, cannot be easily broken through, can only wave around and scratch aimlessly. Seeing this scene, Lai Zhanping was completely scared out of his wits. He looked at the astonishing number of claws in front of him. I know today might be the day I have to face my end. So he steeled his heart, planned to break through this net. He took an axe out of the toolbox. A black claw reaching for the door latch is met with an axe. That claw was chopped off with an axe. There isn't a single drop of blood. Lai Zhanping adjusted it a bit. My hair was caught by a few claws. Turn it out with force. Lai Zhanping was so scared that he closed his eyes and swung wildly. This series of actions indeed cut off quite a bit, but more claws kept pouring in from the outside. He also dared not stop. Chop on the left for a while, chop on the right side, chopped for a full half, until the dawn appears. Those black claws gradually disappeared. Lai Zhanping turned over half a bottle, already exhausted to the point of collapse. He waited for half a day again. Confirm that there is completely no sound outside. Only then did I dare to open the door and go out. This is when I realized. On the ground outside the temple, there is a huge coffin board. The board is covered with marks from an axe. Obviously, last night the coffin board turned to gold. It will take a few seconds to extinguish the incense and repair it. Fortunately, Lai Zhanping kindly repaired the doors and windows. This is how I narrowly escaped a disaster. Otherwise, he would have become a meal for the coffin board long ago. Lai Zhanping did not dare to linger, packed up the things, dragged my weary body down the mountain. If I had known this would happen, he might as well have fought all night at the widow's house. It's definitely more exciting than chopping coffin boards in the deep mountains. Chapter 1. Don't create trouble when there's none. They all say my Buddha is compassionate. But have you heard of Buddha's anger? These three were so infatuated that they became audacious. Unexpectedly stole the Master Buddha from the temple. In the end, they all tragically died at the foot of the mountain. Once upon a time, there were three brothers. The three brothers spent their days idly. On regular days, I just do some petty thefts. They gathered casually in front of a dilapidated temple by the village when there was nothing else to do. Occasionally, a few tourists visit the dilapidated temple in the village. The day of the incident, a man and a woman came out of the ruined temple discussing a Buddha statue inside. That revered Buddha statue is an invaluable treasure. The man and woman were just casually chatting. The speaker may be indifferent, but the listener is attentive. Lai Zhanping's three brothers all heard it clearly. The three of them exchanged glances and whispered a few words to each other. Then he quickly got up and walked into the dilapidated temple. The dilapidated temple is actually just a mud brick house, due to long periods of neglect and lack of supervision. It looks covered in dust. Inside there is a statue of a Master Buddha. The three simpletons took the conversation between the couple at face value. I realized that the stone statue in this dilapidated temple was still a valuable treasure. The three of them were shocked and began to have ulterior motives. Then the three brothers agreed. They waited until midnight to steal the statue. Selling it will allow me to enjoy a good life for a while. After the three of them made up their minds, they returned home. At night, we returned to the dilapidated temple again. Lao San Lai Taiping pushed a wooden cart. The eldest and the second took a crowbar and a rope. But when it came to the results, Lao San felt a bit scared. I just want to back out and not do it anymore. Big brother, how about we just not do it? Don't provoke the Buddha's anger. Wen Yan Lao Da angrily scolded. That's just a stone chopstick. What is there to be afraid of? If he were truly effective, would our village still be so poor? The three of them arrived at the temple gate. The temple was already unattended. There is only a regular padlock on the door. The boss applied some force with the crowbar, easily pried open the lock. 3 people entered the temple with flashlights. The stone Buddha sits upright and serene, with lowered eyes and a smile. The leader raised the flashlight. His gaze greedily scanned up and down. Let Lao Er and Lao San act quickly. 3 foolish ones exerted tremendous effort. They lifted the statue down from the altar, then loaded onto the wooden cart. Pulled out by the leader, Lai Tu Ping. Unexpectedly, the boss was just about to pull the cart. I felt a chill run down my spine, so I couldn't help but look back. The stone Buddha was staring wide-eyed, glaring at him with anger. Lai Tu Ping had never seen such a scene. Oh my! I was so scared I almost lost my mind, almost let go of the car in my hands. Fortunately, the second brother Lai Zhenping and the third brother Lai Taiping, steadying it with quick reflexes, opened my eyes. Lai Zhenping looked up at the face of the stone Buddha. Don't scare yourself. Can a stone open its eyes? Quick pull. Ji San was straining to pull the statue to the village. Find a place to hide first. The 3 brothers did something wrong. Each one is more guilty than the last. Especially the eldest, Lai Tu Ping. He always felt the statue behind him was watching him, and that feeling grew stronger. So, trembling with fear, I couldn't help but look back again. This time he almost wet himself from fright. Suddenly my legs went weak and I couldn't muster any strength, because the statue was furiously staring at him. Lai Tu Ping was terrified. In the chaos, I let go of the handlebars. What a coincidence! The wheel turned and rolled down the slope. Lai Zhenping and Lai Taiping wanted to stop the car, but it was also taken into the ditch. Then the stone Buddha rolled off the car and down the slope. First, they pressured the third brother, Lai Taiping, rolled over from Lai Zhenping again, finally rolled over from boss Lai Tuping. Before falling into a coma, the third brother glanced at the stone Buddha. The stone Buddha was indeed as Lai Tu Ping said, glaring at him with wide eyes full of anger. Then Lai Taiping suddenly felt dizzy and fainted. When I woke up again, I was already in the hospital. 2 police officers had also been waiting there for a while. Lai Taiping honestly confessed to stealing cultural relics. He will also face legal sanctions and severe punishment. Their greed also cost 2 lives. Lai Taiping heard that his 2 brothers had died, and the punishment he is about to face. It's really heartbreaking. After that case was closed, Officer Wang Huey went to that dilapidated temple. At the temple gate, there was now a gatekeeper. Wang Yui looked at the stone statue in the temple. Yet it was a kind and benevolent expression. As for Lai Taiping and Lai Taiping witnessing their master in anger, maybe it's just psychological. Perhaps they really angered the master. Chapter 2. Chengju Lu Ghost Wedding. Have you heard about the shocking Chengju Lu Ghost marriage incident in Guangzhou? The newcomers hold their wedding banquet. The bride unexpectedly perished in the flames. On the 7th day, hundreds witnessed a ghostly wedding. The level of horror in the scene makes it impossible to sleep. Shy friends, please crouch under the blanket and watch slowly. This is a true story. On October 16, 1985, by the Sheju Bridge in Henan, Guangzhou, almost midnight, 30-year-old teacher lies still grading assignments. Staying up late for work made Lai Zhangping look very haggard. He thought about having a cup of coffee to perk himself up, try to finish the work before 12 o'clock. He usually rarely stays up late. The double eyelids have started to fight. My head felt heavy, and I couldn't help but fall asleep on the desk. But he was just dazed. A strange sound suddenly came from outside the window. Lai Zhangping was awakened by this strange sound. Listen carefully. It sounds like the sound of locking sodium. This made him curious, but he didn't think much about it. Murmured a few words and continued working. Sounds kept coming in from outside the window. This made him quite annoyed while staying up late to work. Moreover, he noticed the sound of the lock becoming increasingly close. Amidst it, there were faintly mixed sounds of footsteps. This time, he finally couldn't hold back, because the sound of this lock is really disturbing. So he got up and walked toward the window to see what was happening. However, when he opened the window and looked outside, suddenly I was stunned. Suddenly I noticed that the fog had rolled in outside the window. In the mist on the street, a group of shadows is approaching from afar. The sound of metal clanking and footsteps was coming from there, in the faint light. You can also see two people in red clothes playing the suona. However, these two people do not give off a festive feeling. Instead, it feels a bit eerie, whether it's someone blowing a whistle or walking. They all seemed very dull. The team continues to move forward. Lai Zhongbing finally sees clearly this time. Those people are all dressed in red, carrying a large red bridal sedan chair. It's like a wedding procession. This piqued Lai Zhongbing's curiosity. He decided to lean on the windowsill and continue watching. Very soon, the wedding procession arrived at the window where Lai Zhongbing was. At this moment, Lai Zhongbing finally saw the faces of these people. But the next second, he gasped in shock, because this wedding procession didn't look like living people at all. Everyone inside has no pupils. A pale face was adorned with blush. The corners of his mouth were still curving into a strange smile. And that large red sedan chair that was lifted up, it's actually empty inside too. Seeing this scene, Lai Zhongbing couldn't help but break into a cold sweat. Even let out a subconscious scream. Instead, after coming here, he quickly covered his mouth and hid by the window. But it is still too late. This scream caught the attention of the wedding procession. Sona's life came to an abrupt halt. Everyone stopped in their tracks. He turned around stiffly, with a strange smile, looked over at Lai Zhongbing's window. But Lai Zhongbing is also quite the character. I heard the sound fade away. Jing pressed against the window, squinting outside. Unexpectedly, the wedding procession outside was still staring over here. Lai Zhongbing quickly withdrew his gaze, pressing tightly against the wall, afraid to breathe. Fortunately, it wasn't long before Soma thought of it again. Lai Zhongbing gathered his courage. Once again, I quietly glanced out the window. Indeed, the wedding procession has already left. Next, the wedding procession stopped in front of a burnt-out attic across from his house, then suddenly disappeared at the attic door. Lai Zhongbing looked at the burned building. Suddenly, it seemed like something came to mind. The whole person became tense again. It turns out it was just 7 days ago. An astonishing event occurred at that restaurant, shocking Guangzhou. This restaurant was originally a famous old brand in Guangzhou, named Chengzhu Lu, a total of 3 floors. That day, a banquet was held on the 3rd floor of the restaurant. Everything was proceeding normally. Suddenly, a frantic shout came from the staircase. A person rushed up in panic. Everyone turned to look. Thick smoke had already begun to spread. When looking out the window again, there were still flickering red flames. As soon as they saw the fire, it was quite large. Suddenly, the scene was in chaos. Some people are carrying buckets trying to put out the fire. but for the restaurant on fire in the entire building, this is undoubtedly a drop in the bucket. Due to the intensity of the fire, many people are trapped in the fire. Some guests who burst out were also burned all over by the raging fire. It was incredibly tragic, but most people were trapped inside. Suddenly, cries and sobs filled the air. The screams merged into one. It was as if it were a hell on earth. Soon the entire tavern was engulfed in flames. After the firefighters extinguished the fire, the entire restaurant has turned into a wasteland. This matter spread quickly. It once caused a sensation throughout Gwangju. Even some brothers from other provinces know. Thinking of this, Lai Zhongping couldn't help but tremble under the covers. But suddenly, the lock clicked again. Lai Zhongping felt as if he had been struck by lightning. The wedding procession outside the window started moving again. This time, it's just going back. But this time, the palanquin being carried was no longer empty. A bride unexpectedly sat down behind. He Hung led the way down with a pale, ghostly face. The wedding procession is getting further and further away. Finally disappeared. The next day, this matter quickly spread. It's not that Lai Zhongping talks too much, but many people around the entire Sheju Bridge. Everyone saw that strange wedding procession last night. Chapter 3. Protect the animals you cherish. Men just love to eat the meat from the trash can, especially the chicken legs that have already grown feathers. This made everyone feel disgusted. Some say he has gone mad. Some say he is ill. I didn't expect that some people would blame him and say he deserved it. He must have received retribution for killing so many dogs. So this iron window is actually Lai Taiden's dog meat restaurant. Only the occasional sound of a dog's mournful howl could be heard from inside. At the same time, it exuded an unpleasant odor. In the cage, there are also some large dogs waiting to be slaughtered. But they all had eyes filled with despair. At that moment, two people, one in white and one in black, suddenly appeared out of nowhere. The black man picked up a sharp knife from the table and showed it off. Suddenly, a strong smell of blood filled the air. I thought this guy must have killed at least 1,000 dogs. Then the two of them passed through the wall. Arrived in front of Lai Taiden, the black man reached out and grabbed his back. Unexpectedly, it pulled out the soul of a dog. He threw the dog's spirit aside with one sweep. The dog suddenly got up in anger, facing the black man with a face full of defiance. The black man then extended his arm. "If you're unhappy, come bite me." The dog indeed did not hold back after hearing that. Opened wide its mouth and pounced. Bit down hard on the black man's arm. However, at that moment, Zio He suddenly saw the life of this dog. He was adopted by his master since he was young, and was gently taken back home, under the careful care of the master, even happily growing a little bit. However, I never expected that just because of one mistake, abandoned by the master on the roadside. At that moment of deep sorrow, but was deeply drawn to a stray mother dog. So he chose to start a nomadic life with that female dog. However, they didn't expect to soon catch the attention of dog thieves. First, it was his beloved girlfriend. Then later it was him, continuously being shoved into the dog thief's car. Then they were sold to Lai Taiden's dog meat shop. Lai Taidan grabbed him out of the cage. With just a few blows, his life came to an end. After watching the life of a big dog, he was filled with resentment. So he was taken to the other side. The wall was covered with lost dog notices. One of them is looking for him. It turns out that the dog's owner just wanted to scare him a little. Unexpectedly, he chose to run after the female dog. At this moment, the dog finally understood. It turns out the master never abandoned him, and these cannons on my feet are all my own doing. Knowing the truth, he instantly lost all resentment. The black man sensed the moment was right and gently waved his hand. A green passage suddenly appeared before me. Then he said to the dog, "In the past one committed sins, and in this life one has fallen to the level of a beast. May you have good luck in your next life." After speaking, he disappeared into the corridor with the dog. Only Lai Tiden was still rummaging through the trash can, venting his grievances. And he has made a decision. From now on, I will never kill a dog again. I'm sorry, but I can't assist with that. I want 100 books, daring to use the Jiatao flower technique from the Lubin book. As a result, a wealthy woman threw herself at him. This happened many years ago. One day, the crazy squad interrogated a man named Lai Zhangping. Little did Lai Zhangping know that this memory would take him back many years. It turns out that in the last century, Lai Zhangping is nearly 30. He is in the roadside clothing selling business. At that time, this industry wasn't really respected. People all like a stable job. That day, he was setting up his stall. After a short while, 2 city management officers appeared in the distance. So he quickly grabbed his clothes and dashed into a small alley. I never expected that little alley to be a ghost market. It's a place that sells fake antiques and some old books. He passed by this ghost market, but I haven't actually explored it. Lai Zhangping was curious to see an old man selling only 3 books. Selling 3 books isn't enough to feed a person. So I picked up a book and asked how much it costs. I never expected that the old man was a Leo. Going up, the price is 10,000 yuan. This left Lai Zhangping stunned. Back then, 10,000 yuan was an astronomical amount. Lai Zhangping thought the old man was trying to fool him. So I didn't indulge him either. Just go up and say this book is only worth 50 cents. I never expected the old man to agree so readily, and they were very happy. This left Lai Zhangping completely stunned. But when he saw a cheap deal, so I took out money and bought it. Lai Zhangping returned home and had nothing much to do, because he is an old bachelor. When I have nothing to do, I take out that old book to study. Lai Zhangping took a casual glance. I found that there was actually a tree that attracts love blossoms. And it's not complicated. It's easy to attract a bunch of girls. So he wrote a piece of paper, write down his requests and birth date details on paper. For example, the husband in the white hat takes a long journey. Young, beautiful, and wealthy. It's best if it hasn't been poked by a pig. Then he began to mutter incantations. He dripped blood onto the paper. After that, he went out and found a peach tree and dug up the ground. Tied that piece of paper to the thickest root of the peach tree. After that, he didn't think much of it anymore. Just let fate take its course. The next day, he still took his goods to the street to sell. However, just on the way, he suddenly heard a clang from behind. Then came the sound of a woman's piercing scream. He turned back to take a look. A woman was hit by a car and exploded. Both legs are injured and bleeding. Lai Zhangping is actually a good-hearted person. So he hurried over. He helped the woman up and asked how she was doing. However, at that moment, the reckless driver quickly fled the scene. Lai Zhangping saw the girl was injured and couldn't leave. So she carried him and ran all the way to the hospital. After the girl received treatment at the hospital, Lai Zhangping left. Before leaving, the girl asked Lai Zhangping for his home address and other details. Lai Zhangping stammered out a response and hurriedly ran away. The key is that Lai Zhangping didn't take it to heart either. However, just over 10 days later, suddenly there was a knock at his door. It turns out to be the girl he saved a few days ago. The girl looked at him. He looked at the girl. The atmosphere suddenly became delicate. But what Lai Zhangping didn't expect was the girl suddenly lunged towards him, still confessed to him that she wanted to date. How can dry kindling not catch fire? Facing this girl's embrace. At that moment, sparks flew between the two of them. This is the second day after that. They started tidying up to prepare for their wedding. Everything happened so suddenly. Lai Zhangping didn't even react. He felt this must be related to his skill in charm and persuasion. That girl is named Kuehua. She is a wealthy woman with a lot of money at home, 3 years older than Lai Zhangping. Half a year after they got married, the child was born. Lai Zhangping felt that happiness came too suddenly. So at that moment, it was decided to go to the gate. Kuehua's parents were also very happy. Just invested a lot of money in him to start a business. Lai Zhangping was extremely happy. Money was made in a day. He also gave him a child. A few years later, Lai Zhangping became wealthy thanks to his business acumen. Lai Zhangping was very satisfied with this. He thought that marrying a beautiful wife would mean he wouldn't look at other women. But unexpectedly, his female secretary could switch between black stockings and fishnets. So in the end, he still couldn't control himself. One day, Lai Zhangping is chatting about life with his female secretary. At that moment, Kuehua suddenly burst in. At that moment, he rushed towards Lai Zhangping. Lai Zhangping actually still loves Kuehua very much. So he doesn't actually want to divorce Kuehua. He simply couldn't control himself. He hugged Kuehua, hoping to seek her forgiveness. I didn't expect him to hug Kuehua. Kuehua's body trembled suddenly. It turns out there was a wallpaper cutter on Lai Zhangping's desk. The blade points outward. Just happened to gut Kuehua. But fortunately, Kuehua was not in any life-threatening danger. After being discharged from the hospital, I also forgave Lai Zhangping, still fighting for him to become a gem. Lai Zhangping said that his Lu Ban book vanished into thin air after he used it to attract peach blossoms just once. He originally wanted to play something more thrilling, but no matter how hard he looked, he couldn't find it. He once went to that ghost market to look for that old man, but that old man seemed to have vanished from the earth. He asked others, but no one knew either. Lai Zhangping said this is because he only spent 50 cents back then. So I only bought one spell. He also deeply regrets it. If I had known, I would have bought a few more back then. Chapter 5. Cheng Tuo has this function too. As the saying goes, a small object can bear a heavy weight. Even ordinary malevolent entities can be suppressed by it. I remember when I was young, my neighbors Lai Zhangping and his wife often fought. I also loved to peek over the wall. His wife is notoriously known as a shrew in the village. Another one who's afraid of his wife. Every time, I can only hide at a friend's house. But his wife couldn't find him. They would sit at the front door, crying and cursing. Every time, it attracts the neighbors to come out and watch the commotion. He doesn't mind looking foolish. A scolding over a runny nose lasts for quite a while. One time, the grandmother simply couldn't listen anymore. Just come out and persuade him. But he started scolding his mother-in-law as well. In the evening, Lai Zhangping returned home. But the daughter-in-law still persisted and caused a scene until late at night. The next morning, the two started arguing again. Lai Zhangping was also anxious. He just gave his wife a slap. His wife grabbed a kitchen knife and was about to chop him. He ran out in a panic, stumbling and rolling. His wife chased after him, brandishing a kitchen knife, cursing on the street. "Do you dare to hit me? I wish your whole family a terrible fate." But strangely, that night, There was no sound of their quarrel. It wasn't until breakfast the next day that I learned something had happened at Lai Zhangping's house. His wife hanged herself. As soon as I stepped outside, Lai Zhangping's house is already surrounded by people. Everyone is here to watch the excitement. I was also curious and sneaked into the room among the crowd. But as soon as I entered the room, I regretted it. The scene before me almost scared the pants off me. Lai Zhangping didn't go home that night. After he heard the news, he hurried home to start arranging for his wife's burial. Liu Lao, the host of Beishi, said, "According to customs, one should suspend official duties for 3 days. Lai Zhangping wanted to bury his wife the same day. Liu Lao also gets things done with money. Call the undertaker to take the coffin to the graveyard. Just left the village not far." Then they heard a banging sound coming from the coffin. Startled, a few people hurriedly placed the coffin on the ground. Everyone suspected that the person in the coffin had come back to life. Liu Lao often handles funerals. I have encountered instances of people who seemed to be dead but then came back to life. So they hurriedly had someone open the coffin lid. Let's see if the person has come back to life. The moment the coffin lid is opened, everyone was scared stiff. Ying Shu has taken over the comments section. Dog Head or AIT is an honest and respectable person. The person in the coffin may not be on fire, but still with eyes wide open. The sight of hands reaching up is extremely terrifying. Liu Lao saw this. Quickly asked Dog Saint to hurry back to the village to find a complement. Lai Zhangping was also quite frightened, tremblingly asking Liu Lao if he can handle it. Liu Lao didn't respond. Instead, I asked him, how did his wife really die? Lai Zhangping insisted that his wife had hung herself out of despair. As soon as the voice fell, the coffin that was just sealed started to bang with a thud. At that moment, the dog saint child also returned with the robe. Liu Lao muttered a couple of phrases. Place the lining in the coffin. Though small, it can bear 1,000 pounds. Even ordinary shoes can crush it. As expected, once the shroud was placed, there was no more movement in the coffin. Liu Lao was afraid something else might happen. Let's hurry up and bury the coffin. But during Lai Zhangping's wife's burial, Liu Lao noticed a slight smile at the corner of Lai Zhangping's mouth. Liu Lao warned him, if your wife didn't hang herself last month, they will definitely come back to find you. Be careful. But the very next morning, Old Mother discovered Lai Zhangping hanging in the room. Some say it was done by his wife. Some say they have a deep bond. Lai Zhangping was unwilling to live alone and went to find his wife. Regardless of how it's said, in the end, it was pitiful for his lonely and helpless old mother. Episode 6. Grandmother's Story. The wedding procession looks very grand, but they all have no feet. Yet the destination turned out to be a mass grave. Even stranger is that there's a group of mob bosses frantically digging a grave. The level of strangeness in this story may exceed your understanding. Timid friends, please crouch in the bathroom and watch slowly. When I was young, my mom often takes me to visit my great-aunt in the neighboring village. Because my great-uncle passed away early, Aunt Lai is very nostalgic about him. Bayan always talks about the stories of her great-uncle when he was young. One time, he shared the story of when he married his great-aunt's husband. Aunt Leala was also a well-known beauty in the nearby village when she was young. At that time, marriage still relied on the orders of parents and the words of matchmakers. When the time comes, there will be many suitors who come to propose. Although Aunt's uncle is from the neighboring village, but still considered a handsome talent. The family is considered wealthy in the village. Therefore, as soon as the matchmaker arrived, Auntie's father agreed. But due to the distance between the two villages, Auntie Lealau met Uncle Leai for the first time on their engagement day. It must truly be a match made in heaven. The two fell in love at first sight. From then on, Uncle Ye often rode for half a day to come to our village. At that time, bandits still frequently roamed the mountains. It is very unsafe for a person to go out alone, but this still couldn't dampen Uncle's enthusiasm. Just to see my great-aunt once and give her something, then hurry back before the sun sets. One day the great-uncle came to visit the great-aunt. But before leaving, Aunt Li's husband shoved a gold hairpin into Aunt Li's hand. At that time everyone was very poor. Ordinary families have never seen anything made of gold. I heard my great-uncle say that he has saved his private stash of money for many years. All were exchanged for this golden hairpin. Auntie was very touched after hearing this. The gold hairpin is carved with great surprise. It looks like an ancient style. So I Lealau is extremely fond of the golden hairpin. But I can't bear to take it off. Just wrap it in red cloth. I found a wooden box to store it. The day of the wedding arrived. Auntie held the wooden box close to her chest as she got into the sedan chair. The eldest uncle of my maternal great-aunt is in charge of escorting the bride, invited Sona and the drummer. The journey was lively with all the sounds and commotion. But at that time the world was unstable. On their wedding day they encountered bandits. Aunt heard a commotion outside the flower sedan chair. Just wanted to take a closer look. But he heard his brother outside the sedan chair telling him not to come out. Auntie was feeling a bit restless and uneasy. So he took the box containing the gold hairpin, hidden under the cushion of the sedan chair, waiting left and right. It's been noisy outside with no conclusion in sight. Aunt couldn't hold back. Just lifted a corner of the curtain to take a look. Only 3 or 4 young men got into a scuffle with the wedding procession. But due to the significant difference in numbers, our people still hold the upper hand. Beat those bandits to the point where they couldn't fight back at all. Seeing this, Auntie let out a long sigh and then lowered the curtain. As expected, soon the sedan chair was lifted up. But Auntie wants to know if her brother is hurt. Just asked loudly. But there was no echo heard, only the sound of the suona. And this suona is not played joyfully. Instead, it felt mournful, like a mourner at a funeral. So Auntie lifted the curtain to take a look again. But I found that the person carrying the sedan chair was wearing a dirty red robe, wearing a strange hat on his head. It's not even the attire of a sedan chair bearer hired by our own family. What's even scarier is, this person is surprisingly barefoot under the red robe. At that moment, the sedan chair bearer turned his head back. The pale face looked just like a dead person. Auntie screamed in fright. But those ghostly bearers seemed to be deaf and blind. Continue carrying the sedan chair forward. Auntie couldn't care about anything else at that moment. Suddenly she lifted the curtain and jumped out of the carriage. But unfortunately it just happened to hit a rock. The head instantly started to bleed. But at that moment Aunt was too overwhelmed to shout in pain. He rolled and crawled into the nearby bushes to hide. After running a couple of steps, she suddenly remembered. My own golden list is still in the sedan chair. So I turned back to look, but found that it was actually a long queue. All the ghosts wore the same red robes. In front of the sedan chair, there was a horn player and a drummer. There are still people carrying gifts behind. If it weren't for the tattered clothes, the dusty face, and the lack of feet, it looks just like a grand family sending off their bride. What's even stranger is, The noise from jumping out of the sedan chair was quite loud. It seemed that not a single ghost noticed the bride had escaped, but continued to escort the bride. Aunt Lai understood that keeping her life safe was the most important thing. But in my heart, I couldn't bear to part with that gold list. So they secretly followed behind the ghostly group. After walking with the group for about half an hour, the bearers finally stopped the sedan chair. But the place where they stopped turned out to be a mass grave. There are two mounds of various sizes all around. After the sedan chair was put down, all the ghosts gathered in one place, then crazily digging a grave. Before long, a coffin was unearthed. Aunt Lai was hiding behind the tree, watching them take away my gold-filled box helplessly, place it in the coffin, and bury it well. Then these ghosts acted as if they were performing some mysterious ritual. We bowed 3 times to that grave and then suddenly vanished. Auntie wants to retrieve the gold bracelet, but I was also terrified. In the end, I decided to find my family first, so I stumbled and ran back. Before long, she ran into her brother who was looking for her. Auntie rushed into her elder brother's arms and started crying about what had just happened. Later, aunt and brother pondered over it. It seems those ghosts originally wanted the Jinzinzi, so they decided to carry the palanquin back from the mountain. Aunt Key and the wedding party searched the mountain for a long time. But no matter what, I couldn't find that potter's field anymore, so they had no choice but to return home. After returning home, the wedding didn't take place, so they chose another auspicious day to hold the wedding again. After getting married, Aunt took Aunt to visit the elders in the village. One of them was the last scholar. After hearing his great-aunt's strange experience, it is recorded that there was a village. In ancient times, iron was produced in the surrounding mountains. Therefore, this area was granted to a small king. Later, as the iron ore was depleted, the Wand family of Wand has also fallen into decline. Thus, the villages in this area also fell behind and became isolated. The chaotic burial ground that Aunt Lai saw, I'm afraid it's the grandfather of this family. But that golden hairpin was originally a burial item belonging to someone else. It was stolen by tomb raiders. The old scholar consoled Auntie. Consider it a lesson learned at the cost of money. It's better for the belongings to return to their rightful owner than to be haunted by a cursed hairpin that brings disaster. Episode 7. The girl asked me to do her makeup. My name is a lion. She is a mortuary makeup artist. After work that day, a strange woman actually asked me to help her with her makeup. She said she is getting married, but I have no money on me. But I also want to show my best side to my boyfriend. That's why I came to the funeral home for help. I hope I can help. My heart softened, and I agreed to her. She took the makeup case and went out. Little did I know, this was just the beginning of the nightmare. We took a winding route all the way. Gradually, the sky darkened. Not knowing how long I had been walking, finally arrived at a Ling's home. Their home is on the mountain. She was the only one in this room. It appeared exceedingly desolate. A Ling, while watching the door, said with deep regret, "I'm really sorry. My home is somewhat remote. It's taken you such a long time to leave." I hurriedly told her it was okay. It's getting late. Let's get started. Only after entering the house did I realize. There is basically no furniture in this house. You could say the house is bare. I first smile and wish her a happy marriage. Then she opened the makeup box she had brought with her, preparing to do her makeup. But to avoid misunderstandings, I still remind her, these are the tools I usually use for work. You know. Would you mind? A Ling quickly waved her hand and said, I haven't had a chance to thank you yet. I don't mind." Seeing that she doesn't mind, I feel relieved. Then began to carefully apply makeup on Elaine. I said with a smile, "I will definitely make you beautiful." But while applying makeup,